So that is the bass line from George Baker's Little Green Bag of 1968, and it's an era where the Plectrum made its sort of debut really with the bass. Hitherto it had just been fingers, because this is essentially a problem solver. Its function in life was to usurp the double bass, which couldn't be heard in a big band of the late 40s, so Leo Fender came up with this. This is a slightly later design, but essentially the principle is the same. So Plectrum, I'm a guitarist as well, and I use really fat Plectrums, these 3mm sort of boiled sweets, and you can get a really powerful sound out of this Plectrum using the bass. You can get special bass Plectrums as well, which are slightly bigger, but you just use what you like. So what I've got is I've got the palm of my right hand, the outside edge here, just onto the strings. So it's kind of like this. You've got your right hand just onto the strings, which essentially dampens the strings. It's called palm muting if you look at your sort of guitar books. So you get an initial attack and you can hear the note, but it damps, just falls away, as opposed to this. So this is a very sort of simple riff, and it's in the key of G, and it's actually the G minor pentatonic. So it's just across 3 strings and 3 frets. Now, as with the Rapper's Delight bass riff that you can see on my channel as well, I've used my index and annular fingers here rather than my last finger there, because that you can get really quite lazy doing that. Whereas if you have one finger per fret, it means that you're also less cluttered. And you can put little sort of fills in as well. But be wary of complexity. The best bass lines, including this one, are so good because they're simple. You know, it's not sort of, this is a completely different world to playing guitar riffs, which generally speaking have a bit more busy. So I start on a G. Now I could start here, but it doesn't have as much sort of bass and middly impact as playing here would. It's just a bit tougher there. So I've got a G to start with on using your annular finger, so that's 10th fret on the A string, or the 3rd string. And then everything is on 8th and 10th frets. So 10, 8, 10, cross string to 8 here, back to 10 on this string, on the A string, 8, 10, 10, 8, 8 on the 4th string, and then 10th. And then it's basically using the same notes. It's a good idea also with things like this is not to learn too much of the order of the notes, like 8th fret, 10th fret. It's using your ears as well to guide you. And it's worth putting the record on, listening to it, and then trying to play the first part of the riff just by hearing. Just by sort of hearing what you're playing and comparing it with what's on the record. It's really good practice. So now you can also hear that there are no other strings sounding. I could do this. Actually, all the other 3 strings were sounding. This note here, G, is actually the same open string as the 1st string here, the G. So that's going to just wobble on its own. When you play the G, it's going to, there we go, it's going to move on its own. 2 ways of doing this. Ideally use both ways. Now when I'm playing with the Plectrum on the A string here, I'm actually, resting on the 4th string, on the E string here. I'm resting on that one. And I've got my last finger just on the D and the G strings here. On this hand, I've also got this finger just taking care of all the others to stop them moving about as well. So you can go. You can do that without fear of the other strings ringing. And it's a problem with bass, because when bass frequencies mix, you get this sort of mud at the bottom of your mix. And if you're recording and it happens, you'll forever be listening to the recording thinking, I can't, this is sort of area of recording where I just can't seem to mix. And it's usually going to be open strings or other extraneous noises in the background. So there is Little Green Bag by George Baker. And have lots of fun with it.